Good morning, everyone. My name is Don Liu. I'm the Chief Tourism Officer for the City of Los Angeles and Executive Director of the City Tourism Department. We have responsibility and oversight over two major contracts, one for the Convention Center, which is managed by ASM Global, and another one with the LA Tourism and Convention Board, which markets and promotes the city all over the world. Let me get started by having everyone introduce themselves. You all have their bios, so we don't need to go into long detail, but just quickly tell us your name and what you do and why you're here.
Hi everyone, my name is Romain. Come all the way from Paris for this beautiful conference. So I'm super happy to be there, and thank you for having me. I'm working for Choose Paris Region. We are a non-profit organization, mainly financed by the Paris region government, which includes the city of Paris and 7 counties surrounding Paris. And our goal is to promote the destination for businesses, tourists, film producers, and also international talent. And I'm super happy to be there.
Bienvenue.
Thank you, merci.
Karla.
Thank you. Hi, Karla Martínez Owunwanne, Senior Director of Government Relations for the U.S. West and LatAm at LIME. So here to just chat about how the private sector engages with municipalities around planning for mega events, and in particular our experience at the Paris Olympics.
Sam.
Hello, my name is Sam Morrissey. I'm the Vice President of Transportation with LA28, the organizing committee for the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. We are the host committee tasked with putting on the games, so I'm here to represent the perspective of the organizing committee and talk about the things that we're doing to put on the largest peacetime gathering in history that we'll host here in 1,340 days. Thank you.
Perfect. Marcel.
Thanks, Don. Hi, everybody. Marcel Porras. I'm the Deputy Chief Innovation Officer for LA Metro. I'm in the Office of Innovation, and our team is really coordinating Metro's work around the games. And so working with folks like Ray Sosa, who just gave the keynote, as well as with our operations folks, and then also just with several partner cities, agencies to really advance the work so that we're ready for the games, get people where they need to go.
Great. Well, this is an exciting panel. And we've got a great topic, transforming transit for mega events, preparing LA for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Before we get into the Olympics, we had a pop-up short notice mega event on November 1st when the Dodgers won the World Series, and we had two. Yeah. But we had 2 days to plan a parade. And I'm just going to throw this one out here before we dive into the Olympics. But anything we could learn from that event? Does anyone have any thoughts about what it was to put together a parade in 48 hours? It may have seemed like 48 hours. Let me assure you that there are many people that were planning the event for weeks in advance, but under secrecy and sworn to secrecy, so that we would not jinx the World Series. But there were groups planning as we were getting closer to the World Championship. Marcel, you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can start. I think it just demonstrates again just the technical expertise that we already have responding to mega events here on the ground, right? And so it was a really great recent opportunity for Metro to work closely with the city, to work with the Dodgers families, to really make sure that we are providing options for people to get to the game. I think those of you who might be familiar is Metro is responsible for running a shuttle bus from Union Station up to Dodgers on dedicated lanes. I think we had a record attendance during the World Series, and then as well during the parade, we we're at maximum capacity getting people in and through downtown. I think we saw an additional 100,000, 150,000 people on the system that day. And so again, it was real-time work, a lot of lessons learned, and I think we're hoping to just continue to roll those into all the next events that are coming down the road.
Yeah, no, similarly with Lyme, so we're really excited to kind of see the excitement around the city. In the kind of days leading up, it was a lot of very quick turnaround, collaborating with our partners at LADOT, with law enforcement at LAPD, ensuring that we were using our product tools to geofence to make sure that we were keeping things orderly, compliant, and really just responding in a timely manner. And the really great thing about it is after everything was said and done and we looked at the numbers, that Friday, the day of the parade, actually was our record day for gross bookings in the entirety of our history in LA since 2017. So I think it really demonstrates that folks were looking for ways to get around the city, get around downtown. And so it really is an option for people, and it shows that there is a demand there.
And I'll
Sam.
just add from the organizing committee perspective, I was happy to take this opportunity to go observe and cheer on the hometown champs in the first of hopefully many subsequent parades that we will be able to practice before 2028. But I was excited to see so many people riding transit. I came down on the L line from Pasadena, and I was excited to see more and more families getting on board, more and more people that clearly had not used the train before to get to downtown, but were doing it because they understood that parking would be a challenge and that the volume of people would be a challenge. So these are things that we want people to start thinking about now as they plan for how they're going to get to the games in 2028. I was also excited to walk with a large group of people from Union Station to the City Hall area just to see that people were ready and willing to walk that distance, and they were comfortable doing that and really using all the different mobility features of our city. So I think it was a great time. I'm looking forward to next year. We can practice it again next year when we host the parade again, and also look to just really increase the use of transit to get to games before 2028.
So we can do big things on short notice.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's get into, as long as we're talking about lessons learned, let's talk about Paris. And I think, Sam, you were there, and Marcel, you were there. Karla, did you make it to Paris? Okay. And of course, Romain, you were there. We'll end with you. But let's start with Sam, and tell us, briefly, what kind of lessons were learned, and what can we gain from Paris's great event?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, hats off to Paris. I think Paris really succeeded in making the Olympics something that people were still amazingly interested in. And Paris did an amazing job also promoting the Paralympics, showing people the beauty of having both of these events at the same time, really activating not just a single city, but a region that constituted multiple cities and multiple partners throughout the region. It was exciting to be there. I was there for probably close to 40 days, which is a very long period of time. I did write my high school French teacher a letter to thank her for giving me a foundation in French 30 years ago that I was finally able to use. But it's amazing, and it's amazing to see the volume of activity. So from the organizing committee perspective, there are roughly 100,000 people that we will require to put on the games. And just to see that in the face of it in Paris, every train ride you were on, every bus you went on, every street you walked down, you could see people with the special accreditation tags, meaning that they were involved in the games somehow, somewhere. They were part of that production and delivery of the games. The Paris metro system worked seamlessly. I will say I was on certain trains that broke down from time to time, but we were able to get off and get on a different train. It wasn't a perfect system. Like any system will have its challenges, but it worked perfectly to connect people up to the games. There were a lot of amazing innovations in terms of management of station access points and managing crowd flows, and a lot that we take away to show what it truly means to host these mega events in a city, what it means to take a venue that typically hosts maybe one event a day and turn that into 2 and 3 events in a day, and what that means to move people in and out, and how do you manage the access to proximate transit stations, how do you manage the pedestrian flows. I think we came away from Paris knowing that these games will happen next in Los Angeles in the summer of 2028. These games will start on July 14th, 2028. It is going to be amazing and exciting, and it will be a great opportunity for the whole region to step up. So I think we came away from Paris excited and ready to really roll up our sleeves and get that work done.
Thanks, Sam. Anyone else? Yeah, Karla.
Yeah, I think probably the largest takeaway for us from the Paris Olympics was just that planning takes a lot of time. A lot of time kind of across the board from the public and the private sector. And so I think it's really great to see that LA's already like full on, they've they dove into the planning process. We've had meetings with Metro, with LADOT, with nonprofit partners like Move LA to start talking about how we're planning for the games. I think, one of the challenges that we see in LA is it's notorious for being very car-centric, but I think the same could have been said about Paris a very long time ago. But what we've seen is over time, in particular this last decade under Mayor Hidalgo's leadership, is we've seen a very intentional effort to really make the city more bike friendly and to steer folks away from driving in cars. And the reality is that a lot of those decisions, they take really strong political will, because oftentimes they're not super popular, especially with drivers, because you're essentially having to allocate spaces on our streets that are traditionally taken up by cars, and you're allocating those to pedestrians and cyclists and other micromobility users. And so it's going to take many, many years of planning. It's going to take the public and private sector coming together, really making the investment to build out the infrastructure to get the buy-in. And it's a really great opportunity. We're seeing that, one of the legacies that's been left behind from Paris is they've really been able to show us that this can be done, that we can approach this from a car-free perspective, and that, it can really, that can be the permanent legacy you leave, that you're moving folks away from that. But yeah, that's primarily lots of planning. So we're very excited to kind of take the next few years to really get to a place where we know that we can be there and we can provide an option and we can work closely with all of our partners here.
Thanks, Karla. Romain, what advice do you have for Los Angeles?
That's a tough question. I don't have precise advice, but just to come back to the question, the lesson learned, I think the first thing for me is that Paris 24 open a new area where the games are integrated into the city rather than just confined in some stadiums. So that's the first point. And I think the most beautiful example is the iconic opening ceremony along the Seine River. I was there. It was very wet, but it was amazing. And I think it set the tone to the whole Olympics and Paralympics. So that's the first point. And regarding mobility, transportation, we had 25 venues in the Paris region, and all were connected to a metro stop, maximum 400 meters. So that's the first time ever that the game is 100% accessible by public transit, and we are quite proud of that. And this is also the heritage or legacy of many, many years of investment in public transit. So that's something we are proud of that. And to manage that, we had a huge contribution from the PTA, the France Mobilité, and also the PTOs, RATP, SNCF, and all the smaller operators that done a great job in preparing, planning, delivering, and also maybe staffing, because it was an issue, as I think in the US we have a bus or metro driver shortage in France, and I think the operators did a great job training and hiring some people that can now work for the operators. Sam, you mentioned the volunteers. The volunteer program was a success, and I remember taking the bus or the metro, and young men or women just saying, okay, with a smile, which is not some very often in Paris, but saying that, okay, you can wait, and sometimes they sang a song, and it was like super funny, and it really impressed me. And yeah, again, congratulations to the volunteer program. It was great, and also I must just conclude on that. But we had innovative companies that have worked with the PTOs and also the committees, both international and French companies, and we have a delegation of French company here, 8 startup or 8 companies. So you can meet them during the 2 days at CoMotion and have a better feedback on what they need to make this Olympics a success. So yeah.
Thanks, Marcel.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed that was not evident for folks who just arrived. and it has to do with just the opportunity to meet with the various of the agencies, with the city, with Paris 24, to be there with LA 28, to meet with the International Olympic Committee, was just a level of collaboration across all the agencies. I think it was really clear whose responsibility was to do what. And so I think that that was really key. And then I think another lesson learned in having conversations with some of those stakeholders is like, just don't wait. You have to really lean into what your expertise is. No one's going to come and tell you how to do your job. And so I think that was really impactful, and it was evident when you were there. SNCF, one of the operators there, is in charge of all the stations. And their footprint was all over those stations, the wayfinding, the volunteers that they drew from their ranks. And it just seemed very seamless, right? Into the volunteers that were in the street guiding people, the volunteers that were at the venues guiding people. You never really knew that there was a difference, but there was. And then on top of that, I think the other one that we know a lot of people came away with was wayfinding. And so they stand up a lot of temporary wayfinding during the games that is taken down after the games. And so really understanding kind of just the level of planning that went into that and getting that accomplished, which I think there's like also
Who was responsible for wayfinding? Whose job was that? Romain? Do you know who? Was it a city project? Was it a...
I think it's a common project from the city,
Paris
the rain.
24?
It was a common project. What Marcel mentioned is important is the collaboration at every level of the city level, the region, national, and also the committee. Yeah.
But I think the other thing around wayfinding that I'll be remiss not to mention, especially to this crowd, was that the other one was digital wayfinding, right? And so what the role of apps in getting people to and where they needed to be, there was differences between the apps. And so I think a lesson learned from us is how do we start now really understanding and working with both the private sector, but also with the government agencies and the folks who control that data flow to make sure that there's consistency across the board.
Great point.
Yeah, no, just wanted to add on that. Absolutely, that's something that our team actually started working on a couple of years ago, and we integrated with the public system so that folks were able to actually use their cards to pay for Lime rides if possible. I know it's a conversation we've had about integrating with TAP, and so I think those conversations or integrating with the Olympics app, really important to start having those conversations now because those types of deep link integrations do take time.
Thanks.
Yep.
Marcel, I want to lean into your point about roles and responsibilities, I think, and coordination. I think that's an important lesson to be learned. But I think, Sam, maybe this question goes to you. What is the role of LA 28 and the organizing committee in supporting long-term mobility and short-term mobility at the event itself, but of course the legacy of long-term mobility too?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So LA 28 as an organizing committee, we are there to deliver a games in 2028. So we are built and designed to plan for and then implement and then deliver 16 days of Olympic Games, 12 days of Paralympic Games, and then we're done. And we're hopefully leaving a great legacy similar to LA 84. That's been the plan since the bid. Now, we could do what other event organizers do for a one-day event and come in and plan for that one-day event and get people in and out and be gone. But I think the opportunity here, for a lot of the reasons that Ray mentioned during the keynote, is to really change the paradigm about how people get around and get to events. So we talked about the Dodger Parade on Friday, I think, and Ray mentioned the fact that we have a rail system now in Los Angeles that we didn't have in '84. I'm a bit of an amateur historian of the LA Games, and there's a great book called Dreamers and Schemers that talks about the 1932 Games, which put Los Angeles on the global map. But my favorite line from that book is when they write about the opening ceremonies at the LA Memorial Coliseum, which will be one of the first buildings in the world to have hosted 3 Olympic Games after we host the Games in '28. But in 1932, at the end of the opening ceremonies, the announcer got on the public address system and told the crowds to please remain in their seats so that the athletes could leave and not get stuck in traffic. So in 1932, traffic was a topic. In 1984, there was all this fear and turmoil about the traffic nightmare that would happen because of the '84 Games. There was this concept that people could work from home. It was crazy and innovative at the time, but a lot of effort was put into place of telling people what events would be busiest on which days, which employers might want to shift their schedules or have people arrive at different times. There were innovations like calling the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach and telling them to maybe not deliver so many goods during the days to back off on that. Very innovative, but it was all around traffic. And I think in 2028, we will have a truly multimodal regional system that will allow people to get to and from venues, not just by cars. Certainly there will be people that decide that they want to drive to a venue. They will be a little bit surprised to find out that they cannot park in their favorite parking space underneath the venue or in their favorite parking lot across from the venue, because so much of that space will be taken up by our operational requirements, as well as the security requirements around this national security level event. So I look to 28 as the opportunity to have all of these investments, all this planning, all this work that we in the transportation industry have been doing for the last 25 years to really increase multimodal transport and put Los Angeles on the map as a global city where there are many different ways to get around, similar and on par with every other global city that has hosted these games. So I think that's the opportunity of LA28 to do that, to leverage the moment and to leverage the investments of the city. But that's where we really rely on our partners in Metro and the other public agencies because they manage and plan the transport systems. We look at how do we implement and integrate into that. We are not planning on developing our own proprietary applications to tell people how to use the Metro system or to tell people how to get around. We would rather integrate with those systems that are proven to work. And I think that's the real legacy opportunity for us, is to see the 28 games as sort of that point when after 2028, people are like, oh yeah, that was the time that I really kind of got used to taking transit to a venue or realized that I didn't need to just drive in my car everywhere in Los Angeles. So I think that's how we approach it. We're there to do one event in 2028. We're built to do that event, but it's how do we integrate and work with our partners and support these longer term goals to lead to that legacy.
I think that's absolutely right. You know, my job as a chief tourism officer and running the convention center, we have conventions, 30 to 40 every year, in addition to our 200 local events. But these conventions bring people from all over the world, Europe, Asia, even the East Coast and other large cities in the United States. Nobody from these countries or cities has a problem with our metro system. They get here and they say, oh, it was really easy to use, because they use one every day where they live. And it's really fascinating to me that people say, wow, it was really a great system you have here. And I think the legacy of 28 could be foreign visitors teaching Angelenos how to use Metro. But I think it really is the case, because I'm seeing it with our conventions and our foreign visitors. But great point. Anyone else have anything on that? No?
One of the things, and kind of going back to the lessons, is we had an opportunity for some of our staff, including our CEO, to partake in the Paralympics. And so I think they're through some exercises as well and some like fun activities, like feeling what it feels like to play Paralympic basketball, and just kind of sensory games, like, and to really kind of expand the realm of what having a disability means, like whether it's physical or cognitive, I think really resonated. And so I know one of the main charges that we've gotten from our CEO is to really think about and take a look at how we're designing our system, and not just to look at American with the Disabilities Act as kind of the ceiling, but as the floor,
right.
And to really think about universal design principles. And so I think that's something we're really taking to charge, but it requires coordination, right? And so I think we're fortunate right now that there is a working group that's kicked off, that's led by the city of Los Angeles, and so working with the city of LA about how do we think about, auditing kind of the approaches to the venues from the transit system, to talking with Sam and his team about what happens once they get dropped off at the door, what's that experience. And so I think that's something that we're really excited that could leave a really long lasting legacy for
Absolutely. That's another legacy
Yep.
that the 28 games could leave, is maybe the best Paralympics ever.
Yep.
We didn't have them in '84, so this is going to be a great opportunity. We're currently designing and preparing for an expansion of the convention center, and a building that was built in 1970 and 1990, and so we have a lot of upgrades to do. But even in designing the new expansion part of the building, we're taking into account a lot of trying to trying to go beyond the ADA standards and the minimums. We actually met with the U.S. Access Board. Some of you were there. And we've met with the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, and we have a number of self-audits that we're now taking to the architects and saying, hey, you know, long spans of carpeting aren't ideal for folks in wheelchairs. You know, we need hard surfaces. That never occurred to any of us. And it's not a big expense to make part of your flooring hard surfaces so that it's more accommodating. But great point. Sam, you brought up a no-car Olympics. I know that was going to come up, and we probably heard that throughout, and we'll hear it throughout CoMotion. But tell us what no-car Olympics means to you, each of the panelists, and what is it going to take for us to get there?
It's a great question. It's a question I asked myself about 2 days into my job when I started in the summer of July of 2022, when I learned that we would have an automotive sponsor and we would also be promoting a car-free games. I think car-free is a message that I think we're trying to figure out how to explain to people in the greater Los Angeles region that this will be a very different type of event than what they typically attend. The last time that we had a full-scale NSSE, National Special Security Event, designated event in the city of Los Angeles was the 2000 Democratic Convention, which was a single event in a single location. There have been other NSSE events around the region. There have been Super Bowls that are single events at single facilities. This will be multiple locations at the same time over 16 days operating, each one with its own security requirements. And also, as a part of this event, we have to get a lot of people in and out of those facilities. We often say in our office, if Simone Biles doesn't show up for the gym match, if the workers in the building don't show up to unlock the doors and turn on the lights, if the camera crews aren't there to film it and the judges aren't there to judge the event, we do not have an Olympic or Paralympic Games. So we need to get all those people in and out of the buildings. We need to make sure that the food and waste is brought in and brought out of these facilities. We have to do that all at the same time of having multiple events per day, moving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people at certain venues into and out of those facilities. So what that means from a car-free game standpoint is we will limit parking for spectators, and virtually every person affiliated with the games will not be able to park a vehicle inside the facility, very similar to what we saw in Paris. Dignitaries, international protected persons, athletes, selected members of the media will be able to get inside with vehicles, but other than that, there will be no vehicular access within the buildings and within a perimeter of those buildings of probably a block or more around those buildings. But what that also then means is we don't just need a wall of congestion and Ubers and Lyfts dropping people off and picking people up in the streets around it. We need to keep those streets flowing. We need to allow the tens of thousands of people to get off from those metro stations, from those bus stops where maybe a shuttle bus system or a temporary GETS system is dropping people off to get them to the games. We need to make sure that those pathways are clear. We need to make sure that emergency access can still get to and from the venues. So what that means from telling people is we need to tell people, don't try and drive and get stuck in the traffic around the venues. There will be people that will try to drive. There will be people that probably try and sell their driveways or their parking space in front of their house. This will happen. We will not be able to control all of that in every area, but we want to make the message to people that the most effective and efficient way to get to the event is via public transportation and through the other modes outside of using your car. They may use a car to drive to a train station in the San Fernando Valley and then take a metro line down. That's something we could support. They may take an Uber or a Lyft to drop them off at a train station to then get on the rail or bus system. But really at the venues, we want people to get in their heads that they cannot get in the car and drive. And this is not something that people are just going to wake up in the morning of July 14th, 2028 and decide. It's something they need to start getting used to now. So it was great to see it last Friday at the Dodger game. I think we're looking for more ways to get that message out. I think we'll be tinkering with the car-free, transit first, no parking games. We'll be tinkering with the messaging. But that's what it means to me in many words. Thank you.
Sounds like bikes might be part of the solution, right, Karla?
Yeah, so I think about car free and I think about just connection. One of the things we saw in Paris is that the venues were scattered. They weren't just across Paris, but they were also in neighboring municipalities. And so we had to find a way to get people around without cars because due to security, it made using cars virtually impossible. And so one of the things we did is we partnered with all the neighboring municipalities so that we actually launched pilots during the Olympics so that we'd have our vehicles able to travel in and out of these places where we didn't operate before. And so really working, I can say right now, thinking about SoFi, we don't operate in Inglewood. We don't operate in some of the other cities. We're in Los Angeles proper, we're in Long Beach, we're in West Hollywood, but there are certainly other gaps throughout the city for shared micromobility that I think we need to start looking at, because we have to figure out how we're going to connect people, knowing that venues for the LA Games in 28 are scattered across the region. What does that look like? I immediately think of the festival trail that Move LA is kind of spearheading, which is a 22-mile mobility corridor that essentially connects all of the Olympic venues using public transit and active transportation. And so investing in something like that, which allows folks to move around with public transit, with things like shared micromobility that can help that first last mile, and just really get people around without having to rely on cars, I think is incredibly important. But of course, that requires funding, it requires money. And so where is that funding coming from? But really building that out over the next few years so that people can get used to getting around the city in more than just cars. And the other part of that is that, ideally that would be part of the legacy that the Olympics leave, that this 22-mile corridor, or however much we're able to build, it will remain there for people to continue to use beyond the games, and it'll help kind of shift the way that people move around the city and really add to the transportation network throughout the region. So that's how I kind of think about car-free. I'm hoping that obviously, Lime can contribute to that with both our e-scooters and our e-bikes. So just really looking forward to seeing how we can grow over the next few years. We already have nearly 10,000 vehicles in the region, and
Wow.
so seeing how much more we can scale up. I know in Paris, we scaled up significantly. We had 10,000 bikes. For the games, we scaled up to 15,000 to accommodate those folks. And just to give you an idea of, having a car-free Olympics in Paris and the impact that had, we had over 100,000 new users on our system over those 17 days. We had about 300,000 unique riders during the 17 days of the games. Saw over 1 million rides take place on our bikes. That usually will take a few months to get that, but we saw it in 17 days. And so we really saw people using this as a way to get around. And unsurprisingly, the most popular routes based on data were to and from venues.
That's great. Romain.
Yeah, I can comment this one because car-free for me is also active mobility, walking, biking. And what we experienced in Paris is it was not possible to use a car, to have a car inside the city especially, which is very dense, and also the high level of security and the visibility of the police forces play a major role. Like people were reassured and they can take the time to walk and bike. But biking, I think Paris has experienced a significant surge of bike use and bike in the past few years. But we have, I think, made major investment in bike lanes, in bike parking, and also incentives to encourage people to get rid of the car and I don't know, purchase electric bikes or electric cargo bikes, which is more and more popular in Paris. But inside the city, but in the region too, but inside the city, we have more than 60 kilometers of heritage of the Olympics for bike lanes. So that's a major heritage legacy for this biking experience. But
They're remaining.
they stay, and you even have stickers on or not a sticker, but it's paint on the bike lane with the logo of Paris 2024. So if you are like me, not an athlete, but I ride a bike in Paris and I love to take this lane because it reminds me that I'm not an athlete, but I can compete and against the others. But it's very fun. But just personal experience. But I had the chance to watch the basketball semifinal, the US Avengers against Serbia. It was a fantastic game, and Steph Curry again. It was the final, but Steph Curry did a great job. And I live but 4 to 5 miles away from the stadium, and I decided, okay, I go by metro, etc. But it was kind of complicated, and I was scared of having a lot of passenger because the stadium is big. So I took my bike, and it was like a fantastic. Nobody on the street, no cars. In the middle of the car, I passed through security because they let bike, but no cars, and I park in a temporary bike parking in front of the stadium. And there was volunteers guarding the bike. And it was the best experience I've ever had in Paris for riding a bike. So it was fantastic, yeah.
That's great. And I think what we can learn from Paris is they planned on these bike lanes years in advance of the games too. And like Romain said, they're there forever. So it's another great legacy. Marcel, do you have anything to add? You were there. Did you ride a bike?
I did. I used a couple of different form factors. I rode the Velib, which is the station-based bike share that's run by kind of the region. And then I also did a Lime bike. And it was interesting to see just what the different challenges were to each of those. And as far as like a lesson learned, I carry a personal phone, I carry a work phone. One's Apple, one's Android. And accessing the public system, I could do it off of one phone, but not the other, right? And some of my colleagues had the same experience, and that just goes to the level of like advanced preparation to think about customer experience, all the different elements. And then in some cases, when I wouldn't necessarily plan my trip, but I would try to arrive on the station-based bike to find another station, and it was packed. And so I had to go, in some cases, 1, 2, 3 stations to find a dock. And so that was interesting. And then in the Lime situation, there was areas where I was trying to end a ride, but it wasn't allowed because it was geofenced. And so, just understanding, I think that for users, it could be like a small inconvenience at first, but I think those are all opportunities that we can continue to test and grow. And I think it was just really impressive how they grew the system, right? And in speaking, we haven't had the chance to debrief with Lime yet, but the Velib system, they looked strategically at all the stadiums. They took into consideration what they expected and what they saw as a goal to have people. And so they're like, all right, the stadium is capacity for 70,000 people. We'd like to see 1% of the trips come. And so doing that math, then we need this many docks, or we need this many bikes on the system. And, they tested it out in some instances, day 3, day 4, day 5, they were like, you know what, we kind of were off the boat on here, let's try to reassess. And so I think that really pragmatic, strategic approach to accommodating people biking, I think was really, really interesting. And I think there's an opportunity for LA as a region to kind of really lean into that, not just from Metro's own public bike share system, but with the dockless operators as well. I think one of the things that I'm really interested in, and I know our friends from the Dutch embassy are here and Netherlands, like they travel with their bikes. And so if we're going to have now an airport station that has a bike hub that people can, arrive at, sure, fix in and link into the system, what can that look like as a legacy for the games?
Karla wants them to rent bikes, though. Leave your bikes at home and rent a Lime. Marcel, I really liked your comment about small inconveniences, because that's really what a lot of, 17 days and 12 days. I mean, we're going to have a lot of small inconveniences. When I had the honor and privilege of working on the original bid for the 24 games, and the mayor at the time, Eric Garcetti, used to always say that, we're not building anything for a 17-day party in the middle of the summer in 28. That just doesn't make any sense at all, right? That's why our proposal is a no-build Olympic Games. The other thing he liked to say, using a sports metaphor, was that the Olympics aren't the finish line. It's the starting line. And I always remember that comment, because the Olympics are going to be where we start all of these great projects, and that will last for decades. And we should never look at the Olympics as the finish line. But those are great points. Let's move on to what is it going to take to get a gold medal for transit? Right? How do we encourage and enable visitors? I'm not concerned about visitors, as you've heard, but mostly residents, to use transit in advance of the games. And what investments are you guys planning over there at Metro? And what is that legacy going to look like? I'm going to start with our Metro guy here.
That's a great question, Don. It's a question that we continue to ask ourselves. We're using the games as an opportunity to do an alignment around Metro's strategic plan. And so we had the good fortune to be in a room with our leadership team last week talking about this very question. And it was interesting to me that someone who was on the ground running operations for the Dodger Parade kind of looks at it. And she's like, it's not that we're breaking record ridership. It's that we're moving people in a safe manner, right? In an efficient manner. Because we could break ridership, goals, but there could be issues, right? And so that for me really brought it home in terms of all the other things that need to happen. Some of you may know that Metro's embarking on setting up their own transit police, right? In terms of re-envisioning safety and security on the system. I think that's going to be really, really key. And so I'm kind of like taken away from that's what one of the main things I'm taking away is like, the legacy is that people will experience the system, be able to move and utilize the system to get where they need to go, not just for the games, but for their everyday activities that they may have to do during the game. They might have to work, they might, have medical appointments. And so the legacy is making sure that people can move in a way that's seamless, but that in some instances might leave a lasting imprint on them and their families. And I've said this before, but my imprint for me was in '94 when we hosted the World Cup here, and my dad came home with all of the tickets for all the Columbia games across the state, right? And then and as like a young boy, like that was like kind of a family win, and us transporting and getting to the games and having incredible experiences and seeing all of these the international community come out and highlight and to kind of be proud of that was an imprint. And so when I think about a legacy for me, it's like taking my daughter on the system and her friends to a game, and her being like, or her, helping me manage whatever the app is at the time, right, is going to be the legacy, I think, for Angelinos. I think that the games can leave behind.
That's great. And Karla?
Yeah, no, I think, as I said earlier, kind of at the start of this conversation, I think if we want to get gold for the game, we're going to have to start making some difficult decisions, probably unpopular decisions about how we allocate our space and take space, frankly, away from cars. It's not without pushback. And so making those hard decisions, making the decision to invest in infrastructure, to get protected bike lanes, to have parking for micromobility on the street, away from the sidewalk, in the red curb, those types of things. Also just, really working to expand the geographic reach of the system, because it needs to be accessible. Folks need to feel comfortable knowing that they can get around the city and that they'll have vehicles available to them. I think that's going to be really important. So how we grow that system, again, continuing to really collaborate with all of our partners across the board, because it's going to be a huge effort across the board. And so I think that's going to be a big part of it. Yeah.
Romain, did Paris get a gold medal on transit?
I don't know. You tell me. But no, I think from a European point of view, and despite the cultural differences, I think it requires continuous investment and big investment. The metro in Paris was born in the beginning of the 20th century, and it has a lot of continuous development. And now we have one of the most dense metro in Europe and in the world. So, and for the Olympics, we had 20 years back, we had a new project to enlarge the metro, because if you've been in Paris, it's very centralized in Paris. But when you want to go in the suburbs, first suburbs, the second suburbs, you have to go and commute in Paris, and it's sometimes in some lines it's overcrowded and it's not a good way to move. And now this new project, we will double the number of line of metro, 200 kilometers of more metro lines, 67 new train stations all across the region, not inside Paris, and that's for us $30 billion investment and for like the next 30 years. But if you've been to the Olympics, the south airport of Orly is now connected to the center of Paris, and it was a huge improvement with the automatic metro lines. Before that, it was not possible, and it's just the beginning of other stations across the Paris region that can be connected. So, yeah, it requires, I think, political courage. What you mentioned about hard choice, because even like in LA, but in Paris, space is raw and limited, and you have to do some space allocation. And yeah, continuous investment, just what you mentioned, the Olympics are not the finish line, it's just maybe the beginning for you in LA. So
Yeah, I actually want to challenge you on the Olympics being the starting line. I know this conversation is about the Olympics, but I actually see the starting line for us as kind of right now, because we have so many kind of larger events. We've got the World Cup in 2026. It's something that's actively in our mind right now. We're a global company. We're in over 30 countries, nearly 300 cities, and we're going to be in a majority of the cities that will be hosting World Cup events, and those will also be multiple games. They're going to have kind of a festival leading up to that, so it's going to be a very similar effort where it's not a one-day event, it's going to be multiple days, and so we're already planning for the World Cup across various, just in the West and in LatAm. Mexico, we're going to see LA, Seattle, so many cities are going to be hosting these games, and so we're looking at what we're doing now and how we can actually use the World Cup as a bit of a test run.
That's a great point. You're all over the place. We're just planning for LA. Lime's got the World Cup is 16 cities and 104 games. We only have 8. We have 8 games. Matches in the World Cup out of 104, but Lime has to do this all over the place.
And so I think it's actually one of the reasons why Lime is so uniquely positioned to really excel at the 28 games. We obviously we were there for the Paris Olympics, so we have that firsthand experience, but we also have so much experience with other mega events. We've done multiple Super Bowls. We've done the Rugby World Cup. We just did the draft earlier this year, and with the World Cup coming up, we're going to be in a majority of those 16 cities. And so, because we're a global company and are in so many cities, our app also works in 20 plus languages, including the ones that are like the most majorly spoken languages throughout the country and so throughout the world. And so because of that, we're really finding ourselves in a unique space to be able to plug in and work with our partners on events like this.
So I'm semi-infamous because on October 28th, 2018, Los Angeles hosted, for the first time ever, any city in the world hosted 5 professional sporting events on the same day in the same city. Never happened before, probably will never happen again. But a buddy of mine and I decided we would try to go to all 5 games in one day, and we did it. And made a little bit of TV coverage in the front page of the LA Times, and had Lance Bass chasing us at each of these events. But we went from the Kings game at Staples at noon to Dignity Health Sports Park for a Galaxy game. We went to the Coliseum to watch the Rams, made it to Dodger Stadium for the national anthem and the World Series, and then ended our night at the Clippers game back at Staples Center. But we did not use our cars, so we took Uber where we needed to, and we illegally took a bird scooter before they were approved in the city of Los Angeles. They just happened to be there at the Coliseum when we walked out, and they handed us helmets and bird scooters, and we took the scooters from the Coliseum to 7th Street Metro, where we took the Metro to Union Station and hopped on the Dodger Express with a police escort, not because of us, but the bus had the police escort to the Dodger game. So it was amazing. And you can read all about it on lasportsequinox.com.
Well, Don, I did want to talk about getting a gold.
Yes,
So coming from the
you're going to make these medals. So what's it going to take?
we are
to get
going to
one?
make the medals. I will say though, two things. Having now been involved in the Olympic and Paralympic movement that really resonate with me, and I hope resonate with other people in the room. First of all, the Olympics and Paralympics are all about the sport. It's all about sport as the equalizer. You set aside your cultural country differences. It's amazing. I don't know how many people got to visit the Athlete Village, but it's amazing to be inside the Athlete Village when people from 206 nations and regions are all there. They're there excited to compete at their highest level. And that spirit, it's really about putting everything aside and working together and competing together. And then the other piece that resonates with me is this motto coming out of the Olympic and Paralympic, which is be your best. Because I think it's important to understand that not everybody in the Olympics gets a gold medal. Not everybody in the Olympics gets a silver or bronze medal. But to get to the Olympics, putting Australian breakdancers aside, getting to the Olympics is an amazing feat, and you really are competing at the level of the greatest competitors in that sport in the world. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be at that level. It's an honor and a privilege for us to host these games. We need to embrace the being our best. And what does that mean for getting a medal? It means what can we do? How can we do that better? How can every piece, I love what Marcel said, everybody has a job to do. Embrace that job and do it your best and work together. Right now, we see roughly 1 to 4% of spectators in most major events in Los Angeles take public transportation. There's a great report that the Southern California Association of Governments put together in 1985, the After Action report of the 84 games. I think the author's sitting in this room today. In the 84 games, the highest percentage of spectators to reach any venue was 40% at the Coliseum, where most of the buses went. We're talking for a car-free games, for a transit-first games, we need roughly 60 to 75% of each venue spectators to arrive not in a car. That might be riding a bike, that might be a scooter, that might be a GET system, that might be walking, that might be parking and walking a distance. To get there, we all need to work together, we all need to be our best, we all need to compete at the highest level. Will we get a gold medal? We'll see. It's going to be that's the exciting part of competition. We will see in 2028 who gets the gold medal. I think Paris gets an outstanding gold medal for what they did to elevate the games, to elevate the experience for the region. So I think for us to get the gold, it's about working together and collaborating. It's doing the hard work. It's making the hard decisions. It's not knowing all the information and running with it and building the relationships and collaboration to make it successful.
That's great. We've got 7 minutes and 45 seconds. I was supposed to leave 10 minutes for questions. So let's move on to questions with the exception of myself. We've got some experts here in front of you and some really smart people. So are there any questions from the audience? I can't see. Oh, here, yes.
Thank you so much. So interesting, the planning for car-free. I had a question. How do you plan on dealing with accessibility issues with a car-free, very active transportation Olympics?
So Marcel and I will tag team this response. But so from the games perspective, we have to account for the accessibility needs of actually all of the stakeholders of the game. So the Paralympics, there are athletes with accessibility needs within the different national organizing committees, the different international federations. Actually, numbers of the referees and judges across both the Olympics and Paralympics have accessibility needs. And these are both physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities. We have to provide for universal accessibility for all of those. We will build a system to transport our stakeholders that is accessible. I think something very particular that we saw in Paris that we will see in Los Angeles is also short distance accessible mobility within the venue sites. Some of these venue sites are so massive that we need to allow for people with wheelchairs or other mobility constraints to be able to use those vehicles. We need to work with Metro to make sure that it's accessible to get from the transit stations to the venues, but I'll let Marcel talk about that. And then within our structures, we really value the lived experience piece. So from looking at accessibility, we're working with Paralympic athletes who actually have the lived experience, because it's not just looking at the plans, it's the 3D kind of world that we have to negotiate. It's the digital tools, electronic tools. It's also really the negotiation of the entire journey from start to finish. So that's the lens that we're approaching with from the organizing committee side.
Yeah. So Metro, as part of our requirements, we all have to consider accessibility in our system. We have a team that works out of our head of our civil rights branch of the agency that's in charge with making sure that we're compliant to ADA. We're also doing a lot of piloting around like tactile paths in our stations. It's not ubiquitous, but it is definitely part of the mix. I think in comparison to Paris, what we saw where they don't have vertical transportation throughout their subway system, we do for the most part, and I think we're also identifying areas in the system that are going to see increased demand and how we can improve upon that station, not just for the games, but as legacy. One of those stations we're looking at specifically is the Pico station, which opens up and is the station nearest to crypto and to the convention center. Don mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we did have the U.S. Access Board have one of their meetings here in LA, and we used that opportunity to meet with them and do a walk audit of it. And so again, that was in partnership with the city of Los Angeles. And even doing that exercise, you start seeing we're like, whoa, had we not had someone who was a professional thinking about this, we would have known that the slope of the road that is going to be pedestrianized is actually not going to be accessible. If like, how are you accounting for the sidewalk? Okay, well, you can't fence off the sidewalk because that is actually built to ADA standard. And so I think it's going to be really venue by venue, approach by approach work that needs to happen with all of the stakeholders. Because again, City of LA, as an example, is just one venue city, right? And so what about the City of Long Beach? What about the City of Carson, et cetera? And so as I think venue agreements get signed and that work stream kind of continues to evolve, I think that's the way we'll be thinking about making sure that accessibility is at the forefront.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
I wanted to make a comment. Actually, my name is Bernard. I grew up in Barcelona, and I have been in the public transportation in probably 100 cities. And something, I love LA. I live in San Diego. Actually, today I took the Metrolink to come here. And I wanted to make a comment and maybe some feedback. Something interesting to me, having been in Paris too, and in Germany, you notice cities like Vienna. So Vienna, everything flows. You see people my age, I'm close to 60, riding their scooters, younger, older, everything mixed, and it's almost an ecosystem, and it's a really good vibe. You go to Barcelona, it's a bit more disorganized, kind of like, I don't want to be critical, but like we are in San Diego with the scooters, they don't respect the lines, but inside the metro, people loves to go there. It's almost like a hangout place, right? And then even, I just took the V15 in Barcelona. I was at the America's Cup that goes from the port, goes uphill to Tibidabo, and it's fully electric. And it does regen when it comes down. I'm an engineer. I built an electric car a long time ago. And something fascinating to me, the lady that was driving, same thing that the lady was driving in San Diego, they were gliding with the bus in a way that was really smooth, right? And they were very friendly. So this is my point. United States has the best customer service, in my opinion, and I'm European, I can say that any country I have been in Europe. However, when you go to a bus driver, here in LA, they almost, and San Diego too, they totally ignore you. You ask a friendly question about the bus, about where we're going, they don't want to talk to you, right? When you go to a bus in Barcelona, the bus driver talks to you, explains where you're going, makes sure that you get into the place you're going to get, right? One last thing is I take my contacts, I don't see really well. So I awfully take them because my eyes get irritated, and I experience what people does with people that are visually impaired. So I say, excuse me, I don't see really well. Can you tell me where it goes? You don't see the door, you don't see the gate, and then they keep going like that. They keep pushing you, to the point that I see how people feel. So my comments to this is that it's going to be a vibe in the public transportation. I mean, the country of Andorra and Monaco, it's free. Right now, the train in Spain is free. If you are arrested, they give you like every 4 months. So if you allow people to go for free, especially the students, older people, and people start to like it, then you will see that everybody wants to go. Anyhow, there are just comments. I'm not trying to know everything. I'm excited about using the public transportation. you know, and I used it. I'm not like kind of thing. I inconvenient myself many times to use it, like today, you know. But I love what is coming.
Awesome, thank you.
I think there's a question in there somewhere.
The question is how you get the vibe in LA.
Yeah, how are we gonna get?
that vibe so people when they go, they say, "Oh, it's cool to."
Marcel's
How
gonna
do you
teach-
get the vibe?
Marcel's
You know,
gonna
between
teach
the
us how to
drivers,
smile.
Yeah.
between the people that we want to go. I mean, let's see the teenagers. They have the same thing that you spend to the Colombia soccer game. How you make that short term?
Yeah.
Can you make the bus free?
I think
One
there
last-
have been.
one- we have
pilots,
time for
right?
one last question here. I see. Okay, right here. Sorry. We'll have to wrap it up. Our time is out. There's flashing at me.
Okay,
here.
I did have one question. There's been a lot of great discussion about moving people, but how are you going to move your goods? There's a lot of goods that are going to have to be moved in and out and around the city and these venues, even more than is moved today, given that you're a global marketplace. Any thoughts on that?
So yeah, we definitely lots of thoughts on that. We actually have a working group that is being led by the Southern California Association of Governments, tacking on to freight movement work that they already do and lead. And so that's at the forefront. I think that's also conversations with the private sector. And so I think those are conversations that we'd had with the Secretary's office in terms of, because we do think that is going to be some federal leadership that we're going to need there in that conversation, because I think as many people know, I think 40% of the containers that you know are distributed to the U.S. come through our joint port complex of Long Beach and LA, and Don knows that because he used to be the chief of staff for the Port of LA as well, which is why I brought him on here, because I knew this question was coming. Thank you very much, everybody.
And I'll just add really quick, at the venue level, we're also recognizing that this modern age of on-demand deliveries, Amazons, foods, et cetera, within our venue areas where we have these extensive closures, where we're restricting parking, we still need to make sure those businesses and residents can act and respond.
No
That's a part of the
Amazons for
experience.
17 days. We can
That's
do it.
not going to fly. Yeah. So, but we're going to have to integrate that into our planning and make sure it works. I think it's an exciting time to pilot zero emission last mile deliveries or other solutions like that. So it's a time to try all this stuff because it's going to happen 1,340 days from today.
Well, that's all the time we have. John, thank you for having us.
Let's give it up for our moderator.
Thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for joining us.